And in this second part, Elaine will first remind the work done by the European Access Academy and João on key performance indicators, where we are, and then we will ask a panel of 4 of you to comment on these KPIs. So as soon as Antonella is seated, we can start. Thank you. Elaine?
Okay, well, thank you, Francois. So, as mentioned, and as probably most of you know, at the Berlin Convention in April, we discussed KPIs for EU HTA. So really looked at how to measure and track performance of EU HTA. And we did that, of course, from a stakeholder perspective and looked at KPIs from a patient perspective, clinician perspective, developer perspective, and also system level or HTA body perspective. And as you probably can see in your booklets, it's on page 21 and not 22, or the ones online. We sent the link to the booklet on the website. That's the KPIs that we developed. And we developed them in a 4-step procedure. First, we started already a year ago when we were all in Rome. At the end, we asked all participants to write down what they would consider a most important question to ask to really measure the success. Then we took that and asked the participants for Berlin when they registered, and we took that list and took it to the convention, to the breakout sessions. And from that, we developed this little list that we won't go through in detail right now, but you will see, and most of this will look familiar to you, there are quite a number of points around stakeholder involvement, and we've heard about this quite a bit already on how efficient this is already working or how much opportunities are still there for improvement, I guess. A number of KPIs were there about PICOs. Again, something that we've discussed about, and also a couple of other things. A couple of PICOs also, of course, going towards this major goal of the regulation, looking at patient access, which is something that's a bit more difficult to measure and also not only dependent on EU HTA, but also on national systems, for example. But what we'll be doing now is have a little roundtable discussions with those 4 perspectives. And I can ask to the stage, please, Antonella, Étienne, Fricke, and then also Maria. Please come on stage, and each of you will then give a quick overview of what your considerations are on the KPIs that we had developed at this point in time, where we're at with the experiences, and then we'll open the floor for roundtable discussion. So thank you, and the floor is yours. And you have no microphones there.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm Antonella Cardone, Cancer Patients Europe. So I bring the perspective of the patients. So in terms of KPIs, or the KPIs that have been assessed, I mean, that have been identified through the process that Elaine explained before. So I will say where we are with those KPIs. So in terms of accessibility and reduction of delay, which is the most important KPI, we believe, on this HTA regulation, we have no data yet. So we cannot assess this yet. So we're still waiting for the first JCA report, and maybe even that won't be enough, because then we needed to see how this will be, how the JCA report will be then used in member states until we get the approval of a dossier, of an application. Then when it comes to incorporation of patient input, we already have some comments. I mean, Francois explained before how patients are involved I mean, in some cases, how non-meaningfully yet they are involved, because there are different gaps in the system. What we can say is that we have, as Cancer Patients Europe, so we work on all cancer types at European level. So we are the ones really involved into the first JCA process as a patient community. So we have been requested from the European Commission, from the Secretariat of the HTA regulation, to recruit patients and to identify patients so that they could select them. We have, as things are today, we have identified 12 patients for the process, and at one point we also surveyed those patients to understand the level of involvement and how satisfactory this was. And we have a report that has been presented and discussed with the European Commission and the coordination group. It was presented at the UHTA Stakeholder Network Group in July, and since then we have started a dialogue with the Secretariat, with the European Commission, on how to improve the process. And we already see that the European Commission is really open to improve the dialogue and the situation, the recruitment process. Then, in terms of PICOs, we believe that, I mean, it has said before, so I don't want to replicate or duplicate what has been said about the PICOs, but what I can say is that patients are involved in the PICOs at the moment at member state level randomly, and so this is not satisfactory. Randomly means that some member states, very few member states, involve patients in the PICOs definition. Most of the member states don't. Then when it comes to the consolidation, I believe that is the moment where patients' input should be relevant. And then I will tell more about this later. Then when it comes to informed patient-centered decision-making, so I mentioned that we did this survey, and so the positive aspect is that the European Commission and the Secretariat are listening. In fact, there has been, after that, a fact sheet to try and keep inform the patients on the process. What we found essentially as a negative aspect is the tight deadlines, no or almost no follow-up post-involvement, and the challenges with education and training. But also on these negative aspects, I can say that the European Commission now is giving more time to recruit the patients, and is establishing a procedure for some follow-up, because now at the moment we have no follow-up. Like, we send the patients, but then we do not know if the patient that we have identified has been recruited or not, and if not recruited, why was not recruited. Then when it comes to education, we believe that it was good to set up, to establish those large EU-funded projects on training patients for the HTA process. But as far as I know, none of those patients that have been trained were suitable to the process. So what we are doing, and we have always done since the beginning, is an opportunistic training. So at the beginning, before the JCA started, we organized training and education programs for our members and friends, I say, to prepare them to be part of the info days, for instance. And what we are doing now is opportunistically, when we identify suitable patients, then we train them to be part of the process. It's time-consuming, but still it provides the right competencies to the right person that we need in that moment. And then we bring the patients recruited to speed. This is what I mentioned, both for the JSC and the JCA. What is in the future? So we are now working on a pilot to involve patients as early as possible in the process, in the PICO process. What we are aiming at is a standardized survey for PICOs for patients, specifically for patients. And ideally, this PICOs should be used by the Secretariat and the coordination group to identify the PICOs after the negotiation, like to consolidate the number of the PICOs. So this is the ideal outcome of the project that we are setting up. We would like to see the patient involvement at the very, very beginning of the process with the PICOs definition. Then we would like to see a plain language dossier submitted by the industry for the patients to facilitate the patient involvement. And this is based on a previous experience that has been done. It has been piloted in the UK and in Australia. And in the UK now, NICE uses it as a standard procedure. So any company submitting a dossier in the UK for any indication must submit a plain language summary. And then NICE shares, because NICE assesses the plain language summary and then shares it with the patients. And the NICE has done different levels of assessment of this procedure, and the benefit is not only for the patient involvement, is also for other stakeholders involved in the process. And then we also would like to see the plain language JCA report and how it is used in the member states. So those are the three phases of the project that we are piloting. We are starting it now. It's a project that has been approved under the HTA umbrella, and it has been presented and discussed now a couple of times already at the EU HTA multi-stakeholder network group. And at the moment we are recruiting members for the project group. And we are hoping to implement it together with European Commission and the coordination group as members of this working group. And then of course we need to work more and more on capacity building of the patient community. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonella. And so now the floor is to Étienne Lengliné, who is a hematologist at the Saint-Louis Hospital. Étienne?
This one is working.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Étienne Lengliné, so I'm a clinical hematologist in very nearby in Saint-Louis Hospital. And I am also a member of the National Society of Hematology group from Bernard told about. And I have another hat. I'm also vice chair of the Transparency Committee at the HAS. So I will talk from my clinician perspective. I have to disclose that I was not in Berlin to define the KPI, but I was really agree with the work that they have done. So I think that today we are all of us in a quite strange moment because we have to define a KPI for a process that is ongoing, and so we have basically nothing to evaluate, or it's difficult to know how to measure. Someone have told that during the first part of this meeting. And the second thing is that the current GCA that we are going to evaluate for the next few years didn't go through the GSC. So that means that we are going to evaluate GCA that have not been seen at the GSC levels. That make one more difficult. That it's a big transition phase between the old and new procedures. So I think that clinician concerns are quite close to the patient's concerns. We have a big issue with the PICO relevance, and I try to write down what are the issue actually with the PICO, especially in hematology, with the subgroup. Most of those things have been discussed on the previous session. So the drug availability, the subgroups, combination therapy, and maintenance treatment are things that are quite specific to oncohematology. I think that we are going to need to measure the adequacy between GSC when they are going to be available on the comparator on outcome, the adequacy with the guidelines and the drug availability on the member states. The second KPI that have been identified by the Berlin group was related to reducing uncertainty, which is really a great thing to do in hematology, because most of the drugs are now approved on a non-comparative design. And I think that we have to measure the quality of the real-world evidence, the quality of cohort. Maybe a scientific society at the European level can have a role in defining quality grades of this cohort. Surrogacy validation also should be evaluated as a KPI when the drugs are evaluated with intermediate outcome. The definition of supportive data requirement should be also part of this uncertainty reduction KPI. Another KPI related to transparency. A lot have been told this on the previous session. The availability of the data at all the stage for patient, for clinician, for all stakeholders should be evaluated and could be part of a KPI about transparency. Patient individual data availability could be also something that should be measured with quality of life outcome in the dossier, maybe a part of KPI from a clinician point of view. I mainly focused on the topic that should be measured, and voluntarily I did not go through too much to how and when to measure it. As I said, actually we are talking a lot about a lot of things that no one of us have seen. The process is ongoing. No one have seen a final GCA. No one know how appraisal by national HTA body are going to happen. So it's hard to know when and how to measure all this performance index. So time and access, it has been said by patients, it's really a concern for clinicians. We want to provide the best drugs for our patients and in a timely manner. And clinician involvement should be at all stages of the process. It seems like an evidence. I heard a debate on policy versus scientific PICO. I think that PICO should be clinically relevant, and I think there is no debate from this point of view for a clinician. It's just what are we doing for our patient. The best outcome for the patient is written just there. So we think that the scientific society, especially at the European level, could really play a big role in this involvement of clinicians. And I finished. Thank you.
Frank-Ulrich Fricke, please come to the floor, who will present the point of view of a member state from the healthcare system perspective on how to assess the performance of the HTA cooperation.
Thank you very much, Francois. Actually, I was asked by Elaine and Jörg to present the member state or systems view, and then I made them aware that I was not part of that group. It was basically Jürgen. But they told me, doesn't matter. As an economist, I should be able to comment basically on everything. And hence, they gave me the task to do this. Now, of course, not being part of that group, I started to ask myself, okay, how should I start? How could I move on? And I looked into the goals described not only in the publication but in the documents of the group, and you can read quicker than I can spell that out. But I would focus here on exhaustiveness of KPIs, which is basically a difficult one, specifically when we are discussing a huge number of KPIs. So there is obviously attention. Learning and training the system, this might be too early, and I will briefly I dismiss it right away. Duplication of efforts, so the utilization of JCA reports. Without JCA reports, difficult. And then time to patient access remains to be seen in the future as well. And availability of products, that is, at least from my perspective, within the same bucket. Now, I sorted that, came up with a brief classification, too early, or what's the current status. And now you might ask yourself, why is he telling us this? We were discussing this the whole day, and now another one with the same message in a different manner. My point basically is, if you look into the potential operationalizations you could use. And please forgive me, I did not update the slides yesterday with the most recent update of the Excel sheet. I'm sorry for that. But you see the figures here. My key point is, can you see the column of the number of PICOs? It's left out. Why? Because it's not reported. So we get Excel sheets updating on a more or less regular basis with the products and additional information. But what is left out is the number of PICOs. I don't see why this should be. We could have a column with a number of picos, and I can hear already the objections, but that's for the discussion. I'll leave it there. And in addition to that, because somebody said completion dates, I tried a calculation on the completion dates, and you can take this one and then you can check whether or not these deadlines are met. Thank you very much. That's all I can share.
And now Maria João Garcia.
Sorry. Yes, that's yours.
Who's head of HTA strategy at Roche, but also from the University of Basel.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, I represent Roche, although we don't have actually officially any product going through a joint clinical assessment, and we have also not submitted any product for joint scientific consultation. So in fact, I'm going to talk on behalf of the colleagues that worked on the KPIs in Berlin during the Spring Convention. I have only 2 slides, and one is really to just elaborate a little bit further on the KPIs that we decided to prioritize back then in Berlin, and then an attempt to do a quick pulse check in terms of the implementation reality. So as you can see on this slide, and was also quickly presented by Elaine, we have prioritized 4 KPIs from an HTD perspective, focusing on the health improvement and efficiency of the health system goals. The first one, and not surprisingly, is related to PICOs, more concretely around a reduction in the number of PICOs over time. So here the ambition is really towards an optimization and harmonization of the clinical standards for HTA to really enable a more focused evidence generation, comparative evidence generation versus the most important comparators across the EU, and also to meaningfully inform future clinical development programs. Joint scientific consultations are considered critical for health technology developers because they offer an opportunity for us to generate appropriate evidence and later on to deliver high quality HTA submissions. And here the ambition is really that the process must address the demands while also accommodate the dynamic nature and the dynamic timelines of clinical development programs. And I will come to that a bit later. Similarly, we have also prioritized a KPI around the JCA process. So we are all aware, I'm sure, in this room that there are certain deadlines that are defined in the regulation, very tight, and that really requires predictability and more clarity throughout the JCA process from end to end, and also workability. And what we meant by workability is around realistic timelines, realistic response timelines. We know we have deadlines, but we can also be flexible and pragmatic and adjust the timelines as long as they remain within the deadlines officially defined by the regulation. And also workability, which also comes to an efficient communication between the health technology developers and assessor, co-assessor via the HTA Secretariat. And then last but not the least, we also had prioritized a KPI focusing on the national decision-making. And as James presented earlier today, there is really a significant upfront additional investment that is required from the HTDs. And our expectation is that this is offset by a more efficient national procedure, meaning faster decision-making and ultimately improved patient access. Now, where are we? And I am not a statistician, but if we use today as the cutoff date, I guess one can say that the data for most of these endpoints is immature. For some of them, it doesn't exist, but we are seeing some trends already, some positive, some less positive. So let's start on the first one, on the PICO-related KPI. And James clearly alluded to that. The early experiences have shown inefficiency, have shown a lack of predictability. And here I think, like, although we are aligned in a way with what is written in the guidance for the scoping process, which states that the goal of the consolidation of the member states' needs is to really try to achieve the lowest possible number of comparators, it remains unclear and not transparent how exactly that consolidation is done. So it does lack clarity, and it does lack evidence-based principles. And unfortunately, the scoping explanation meeting has also not been leveraged for the benefit that it could bring. I was personally attending 2 scoping meetings during the Joint Action 3 with UNETA, and those meetings were extremely constructive. Not so many people as I'm hearing now. There was really like explanation on the scope. We even had opportunity to discuss questions around data presentation in the dossier, and even there was openness to discuss methodological issues. It is really unfortunate that those very positive learnings from the Joint Action 3 have not been brought forward to the real framework now. The joint scientific consultation, we are all aware that is a voluntary procedure, and there is a clear deprioritization of this pillar vis-a-vis the other pillars of the HTA regulation. And you can see that by the low number of planned slots for joint scientific consultation. This undercapacity situation, together with issues around the flexibility and predictability, make the system as it is now non-attractive to health technology developers, and also unfit for most companies' development plans. So here we would like to acknowledge and appreciate that there is a plan now to increase the number of request periods in the new year to 4, as opposed to 2 that we had this year. Still, we don't believe that this is enough to duly prepare for joint scientific consultations, and we rather advocate for a rolling basis submission approach similar to what EMA offers. On the JCA front, the system is ramping up. We just learned today that now there are 10 ongoing joint clinical assessments. We have also heard there have been some operational growing pains, let's call them that like that, but there has also been a progressively addressing of those operational growing pains, and that is thanks to the increased openness from the DG Santé and also the HTA coordination group in collaborating and in listening HTA developers through the European Trade Association, FBM. And then last but not the least, again, this is really where we have no evidence yet, not at all. So it remains uncertain. So we don't have any JC report published yet. And according to your projections, probably only July next year, that's when we could expect the first one. So it really remains unclear at the moment how member states will give due consideration to the JCA report, how they will, in practical terms, adopt and integrate the JCA outputs into their national decision-making. And just to close, I just want to reiterate what James was saying. As industry, we remain committed to collaboratively working with all relevant stakeholders to really advance and refine the HTA system, because we think it's an opportunity too big to fail.
Thank you very much, Maria. So I'm sure you have questions. I have a first question, and we have until 18:45 for a discussion. My question to the panel, so we will probably have a mix of quantitative indicators and others more qualitative. For the quantitative ones, the problem I see is they will be descriptive. We won't have a reference, for example, on the numbers of experts in a procedure. We will have numbers, but what is the objective? How many do we want? How many do we think there should be in each procedure? We won't have this. The PICOs, in a way, it's the same. We will quantify the number of PICOs. We will have average and standard deviation, but I hear industry saying that they must be more predictable and they need more time. The more the PICOs, the more time needed for the analysis. But do we really have an objective to which to compare the KPIs or not? And regarding the more qualitative ones, I think I've seen the word satisfaction used, but is there more than satisfaction that we could measure in terms of qualitative outcome of the cooperation? Who would like to?
Just very briefly, Francois, from my perspective, fair questions. But that should not prevent us from measuring.
Sure.
Yeah. My only plea here is, why don't we have those figures on the PICOs for the procedures ongoing? I don't see any reason why this should be avoided in that, of course, and I mentioned that, exhaustiveness versus convergence of PICOs across Europe, this is a tension for sure, and we need to discuss this, but without figures, it's difficult to discuss. That's the only aspect here.
And from my side, I believe that there is one fundamental KPI, and that is accelerating access. And that is something that we can measure. So because when we identified and we discussed about the KPIs, we, of course, we considered the burdens and the uncertainty that you are mentioning now. But then we said, let's, in any case, we have to measure, because only if we measure and we start measuring, we develop some sort of benchmarking. But then we need to identify those steps towards the big KPI that is trying to accelerate access. And so this is so we had to identify some steps to go there, and so this is how we came up to those KPIs. Of course, also I can say it's not the number of people involved or experts involved in the process that qualifies the process. It's how meaningful their inputs are considered into the process.
Can I ask just a clarification by accelerated access? Do you mean faster decision-making at the national level once they receive the GCA report? Or do you mean accelerated access, meaning more member states will grant reimbursement to medicines? You see the difference?
No, of course I see the difference, and for me accelerating means from the time the company submits the dossier, the time the patient has access to the dossier. From a patient perspective, I would say that we should have idealistically the treatment accessible in all member states at the same time. Of course, this is still far to come, but this is our ultimate objective. And in the meantime, we could look at the current time, or what was the time until 31st of December 2024, and what is happening now on, in total, not only what happens at member state level, but from the time the JCA, I mean the dossier is submitted for the JCA process. We cannot exclude this 1 or more year through the dossier goes through the JCA, the application goes through the JCA process. So this needs to be summed up to the time the dossier is at member state level, and then we have to see if altogether is less than until December 2024.
Maybe I just wanted to add that the question that you raised was actually a question that we extensively debated in Berlin when we started talking about the KPIs, and we even went a bit further in terms of what are the metrics that we are going to collect. And I think that's going to be the focus of tomorrow's morning breakout sessions. Because of that, because we missed a baseline. For example, if we think about something around reduction of number of picos over time, okay, reduction from what number to what number, right? So there is no baseline. But as Frank-Ulrich was saying, like, we really need to measure that. And I also want to take this opportunity to mention that HTA has been developing a JCA monitoring and tracking tool. As far as I know, it's being finalized, and the plan is to really have it fully operational by the end of the year. And that's really meant to monitor some of these key process indicators, to also identify challenges early on, propose solutions, and potentially inform discussions for the regulation revision in 2028.
Okay. Étienne?
Yeah, I completely agree with all of the presenters. It's hard to obtain a consensus on the goal before having a consensus on the measure. So we have to measure first, and then trying to know for each measure what is the goal to obtain. Before of that, I think it's impossible.
Bernard?
Just one disagreement. I think the time should be calculated from the time point that the data are out to access to the drug, and not just be a JCA procedure. I think when the data are out, like published on a congress, then everybody expects the drug to be accessible. If you calculate the time a little longer, then you also take industry in responsibility for preparing the dossier, and also to have confidence into the procedure to do that. It doesn't help us if they need 1.5 years or whatever longer, and then the drug is known to everybody but not accessible.
Okay, making it even
I
more
totally agree with you, but that would add an additional level of uncertainty when it comes to compare with the current situation, because currently we were not measuring, currently I believe we can easily check what happened in the past or up to December 2024 in terms of timing, from the time the dossier was submitted and the time the outcomes, the report was out. So this is something that we can measure now. But I don't know if we can measure from the time the publication of the data was done, and so you get my point. I don't know if we can measure that in the past.
It should be feasible, because the publication of our presentation in the Congress is public data. So I think we can have this. Retrospectively, we can have this data.
So we have Jörg, then Jean-François.
Yes, I have one more general comment. Of course, it's too early to measure the KPIs, but I think we can already look at the meter and let's say, where is it turning to red, where is it turning to green at some of those. And two of the KPIs where I think, from my personal private view, I think we are trending towards dark red, is the meaningful involvement of patients and clinicians. So most of you know my perspective, but evidence-based medicine has 3 pillars: data, patients, and clinicians, and it's equal pillars. It's not one is the head of the others, it's equal pillars. And so this process will only be successful if we have equally strong input from patients, clinicians, and HTA bodies. Now, we all know that now, due to the regulation, and we all want and support it, HTA bodies develop a culture of collaboration, integration, and consideration. But as per the regulation, let's say patients and clinicians should only contribute on individual capacity. And from my point of view, there is a red flag already in the composition of the regulation, which I think we should definitely flag for 2028, but I don't know if Étienne or Antonella or also Valentina, if you want to put a comment on this one.
Well, very quickly, so it is clear that is a hard red flag. And in fact, we are working on improving this. And I must say that we started with very dark red. To the point that before we as an organization could understand what the Commission was asking, we had to go back and forth maybe 4, 5 or more emails. Then we understood something, because it was really, and then we tried to look for the patients. So the situation was very bad. But now the situation is improving. As I mentioned, we are given more time. There is a sort of standardized note that is sent from the European Commission to us so that we understand, we need a less back and forth. So there is, there are corrective measures in place. And so we are positive and trustful that the situation will improve. This is from this side. But then we are working on the PICOs and on a meaningful involvement of the patients. And this is something that we, as I said, we are positive that we are heard.
Thank you, Antonella. So we have 10 more minutes. So please, short questions and short responses. Jean-François?
So my question is for anybody. At the end of the day, in case of discordance, who will take the decision? For example, a point very crucial actually is quality of life. So some countries accept quality of life in open design trials. Some countries only consider quality of life in double-blind trials. Some countries want that quality of life is in your hierarchical analysis on the top, but not as an exploratory, but some don't. Some countries look at the subdomain, some countries don't want to look at the subdomain. Some countries take only quality of life scale with the MCID, some don't. And so at the end, who will decide and how?
I think, as Pierre have said, at the end there is appraisal by the national HTA body. So probably the appraisal will keep their doctrine. So maybe it won't change a lot to know how each country are going to make their appraisal after this assessment.
Does that mean that
new assessment phase?
For endpoints without agreement, they will not be considered in the PICO or in the GCA? That may reduce a lot.
You're right.
So I think this is a question that none of us in the panel can actually answer because
who can answer?
But I just would like to add that, yeah, our understanding is that in the end, it's up to the HTA bodies in the national level to make those decisions. And even if you read through the methodological guidance documents, and although one of the goals of the regulation was to achieve common tools and methods for HTA across Europe, there are a lot of instances in the methodological guidance documents that say that ultimately the acceptance of certain levels, certain types of evidence, certain methods is still at the level of the HTA body in the national level. So, but maybe there's someone in the audience that can answer.
If the national bodies are in discordance, will you have a European vote with the majority is for or against?
There is a working group, a subgroup working on methods, and the heads of HTA bodies also have their reflection. So there are different processes there, the national appraisal, but upstream we have, I think, some discussions and some work done to align different HTA bodies on different methods. But
yeah, but so far, Jean-François, sounds brutal, but who cares? Yeah, if there is discordance, each member state will do what they did in the past, and that's it. Yeah, so the convergence in terms of PICOs, in terms of methodologies, and so on. This is something we are not doing these days, and the real question is whether it makes sense to work on that for the future, because finally, when it comes to questions like access and reimbursement and so on, we are discussing prices.
so two questions, someone behind the column, Mander.
Thank you. My name is Kavita. I'm a health technology developer in Novartis. Maybe a question that I'm not sure whether the panel can answer, but linking back to Jörg's point about some of the red flags. So we know that there are leading and lagging indicators. So the leading ones would be that that will determine the final success. So one of it is that engagement that we keep talking about between all parties. So do we have to wait till 2028? I guess before we correct what is a very obvious leading indicator of success. And I guess it's a question for anyone in the room, and not to make it difficult for the panel.
No, I mean, for this, I can already say that the European Commission and the coordination group are already taking corrective actions as we go along. So they are not waiting. It would have not be possible. It would have not made any sense. So they are correcting the procedures as we speak. I could say it's a learning process. We are co-creating this process. But the risk is what Frank-Ulrich said. What if there is a negative JCA report? Because there could also be, I don't know what negative means in this context, but what if there is a negative JCA report? And then the member state, but something that like, but still, like a company that is requested, like if after a consolidation process of the PICOs, the PICOs requested are 12, and the company can answer 2, 3. Yeah, and then there is a report, that's it. But then, still at member state level, in the end, they will make the final decision. But then, does that mean that all the JCA process has been a waste of time, money, and all that? I hope not.
Sorry, from my end, very simple answer. If the PICOs would not meet the German requirements, then you do something for Germany, full stop.
So the last question, maybe, Mander?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just following the question of Jean-François, who will decide? Of course, Germany, because everything has been developed to match the German process. It's a joke, of course.
Monter, please bear in mind, it's not Germany. Germany consists of 84 million people. Just go for the groups and individuals.
Okay, so one...
Yes, answering this last question, the acceptance of the JCA from a country is an indicator, maybe the one of the most important indicators of outcomes. So the success of the acceptance of JCA has to be considered the real measure for the good quality of the JCA, because the stakeholders, the users of the JCA are the country payers. So if something is wrong in the JCA, it is then a consequence for the country payers. And this is, I guess, an important measure. It is one of the most important indicators. We have to, in my opinion, to give a bit more orthodox evaluation of the KPIs, including the categorization of the indicators. There is a discipline in the organization, science of organization, indicators of outcomes, indicators of process, indicators of financial indicators, and so on. the interim indicators. So I guess a more structured framework of indicators led by the final indicator, which is the acceptance of the JCA, is at the base of the evaluation of the success of the JCA and the process.
And the Commission will be monitoring how the member states are using
just because it's very close, this comment. The question is, what does it mean, acceptance? Yeah. There is a national agency say, oh, that's very good, the report. I accept it. Then, when we look into the reimbursement, the population restrictions, the some management agreements, and so, what does it mean, the link between the JCA and the acceptance? So, to say acceptance is not well defined, I think, in any case.
Okay, so I think to answer all these questions, we'll have to wait for the first report, see which conclusions or content they propose to the national level, the rating of the quality of evidence and how that is used by the HTA bodies, and the Commission again will assess what member states will report to regarding the use. And so thank you very much to the panel, to all 4 members.